Hey everybody, Ryan here from Ryan O, and we are now in episode 2 of Manhunt. And this episode is pretty good, I'll say. There's a few nitpicks again, but we'll kind of cover those. I'm going to try to make this a little bit of a shorter episode, just because there's not really as much going on with the story so far. So, first thing we start off with is we're in Ford's Theater, not Ford's Theater, but and we see what looked like, and I thought it was like almost like a PTSD scene for Mary Todd, Lincoln's wife. But then basically, I remember in reality, Major Rathbone, he had so many PTSD night attacks that he always had visions and nightmares of John Wilkes Booth attacking him. So oftentimes he would like go out in fits of rages and attack his wife. Almost killed her one time, and was locked in an asylum to get medical attention. But he had like PTSD from that. I thought that was a moment. I thought that was who was grabbing Booth at first, but now we see it's Stanton, and he's like punching Booth and wrestling with him, like trying to be the hero, thinking again he could save Lincoln's life in a way. I like the scene with like Booth laughing, basically saying like you thought you could save him and things like that. But I don't know. It still is a weird that it's like, again, they're trying to make Stanton this detective like figure, and he thinks he can save Lincoln's life. Or again, there's so many elements to this story that doesn't make sense according to what historically happened. So again, I will try to tell you about some of those things, and then again, after the final episode, I will do a full-blown episode about every episode and what happened historically versus what happened non-historically. Again, that could be some saying it over again in a few episodes, but you'll get a bigger picture of what actually happened. So, like after this, we kind of go like a little bit of back and forth again with them setting up the conspirators. Uh, and we see kind of two, they're talking about Johnson, and again, George Atzerodt is the one that was supposed to assassinate Johnson. He was the one that got drunk and lost his nerve. So I apologize for not remembering his name after the first episode, but seeing his photo, it clicked in my head. So, but yes, George Atzerodt. They already caught basically 4 of the main conspirators, but one of those is a little bit of a, like, how could you say, a mystery, I'll say. And I mean, you could say that for 5 of them, and there's 2 in this episode. But you basically have George Atzerodt, Lewis Powell, aka Payne, Lewis Payne. Then you have the stage coach, or not the stagecoach, the stage handler for Booth's horse. I keep always forgetting his name, but he was basically a conspirator. Some people deny that he was, but basically he was. And then we have Mary Surratt. Now, Mary Surratt, again, even today, many people doubt her involvement. We know that she gave room and board to Booth and his conspirators because one of them was her own son. But again, so many people believe she had some bigger plot plan with it. Other ones believe she was innocent. And the next one is Dr. Mudd, but we'll talk about him in a bit. And this show does change a lot of what's going on with Mudd. So, most of this episode is all about Stanton. This episode is like Stanton's detective skills with his group to figure out who is who with the plan. Again, trying to find Booth. And I mean, I know that's going to be a routine thing in this series, but in like actuality, Stanton basically just soldiers scouring everywhere. Like he had so many people arrested. Like I told you in the previous episode, that I'm surprised he hasn't done so already. They're like almost like trying to paint him as this loving detective figure that stands for democracy, who loved Lincoln, admired Lincoln, and wants to see his plans for black African Americans to be like preserved and to be carried forth, because Johnson, a Democrat, he, even in this episode, he says he doesn't care for black people, really. He doesn't want to help free them. He would rather help the economy boom after a devastating, like, 4-year, almost 5-year war. So, but again, the first episode I mentioned, in actuality, Stanton, he didn't really care much for African Americans either. Again, like I think I mentioned in the first episode, the 54th Massachusetts, the first all-black American infantry in the Civil War, they were supposed to be paid $13 a month. That was the regular Army wage at that time. Stanton took $3 out of that for their food, their uniforms, their equipment, their weapons, and that was it. Literally, the white officers who fought with the 54th, they fought for civil rights. They fought and protested Stanton's order, which didn't really amount to anything. Most of the men did die in a bunch of battles, so it kind of fell on deaf ears. But white soldiers, they didn't have to pay a dime. Everything. They got $13 a month. Their uniforms were paid for by the government. Their weapons, their equipment, their food, everything was paid for by the government. But Stanton said, well, no, either because they're black or we don't know. There's certain like opinions of his, but we do know he did give an order that black soldiers need to cough up $3 a month to the government to pay for their equipment. So again, he's not that much of a saint, almost like what they're trying to play in this series. Two, like, I don't know. I mean, I love this series, but him being a detective and, like, I mean, they're finding all these pieces of evidence so quick that it took a few days at least until they found out who all the other conspirators were. Again, I know they did interrogate George Atzerodt. I know they did capture Lewis Powell, which happened the way it did in the show. He literally acted like a gravedigger or a person digging like a latrine, he said, or a gutter. And he had blood on his coat. And that's basically how they caught him. So I know they interrogated him. Most of these guys probably did talk. They did mention all about Booth and Harold, all the other conspirators like Atzerodt Jr. But already it seems like they're having Surratt be in America by that time. It looked like in reality he did flee and eventually he went to France. But that's a long story. So we're now seeing again that, again, not everyone in the Union supported rights for Africans or African Americans. They did not support that. They would rather not have died for that. They would rather have rebuilt the Union and let them be slaves, which Johnson would rather have. Stanton, in reality, was a little bit iffy on, that we know of to this day in historical articles. So, but it just shows you that not everyone is a saint. And basically in the show, they're kind of portraying Booth as a like Negro hater, which he was. Believe me, he was. He was a devout racist. He hated black people with a passion. But it almost seems like they're not really showing anyone in the Union like that. The only person I can recall so far is Johnson, saying that he's not going to fight for what Abe was doing. And the only other one I could tell was Robert Lincoln, who said, you know, hey, I told you, Stan, my dad was going through this too fast about giving rights to Africans. People were getting angry and sending him all these death threats. So, but again, it seems like they're rushing, but finding so much evidence. And two, there's like a cipher And I mean, it's not like the Da Vinci Code or anything. Like, I read so many books where I've never even heard of a cipher with Booth and his escape plan. Really, his only escape plan was to get to the South, where again he thought he was going to be hailed as a hero. So, which makes me like how they're portraying Booth. I mean, when like he doesn't want to talk around the slave, but I mean, I don't know, if she's not really a slave, her and her brother. They were slaves, but now it seems like they're like, oh, the help or the carpenter and the maid. Like Dr. Mudd wants them to let the Union know. But he treats them like slaves. But with them, with like Booth, like talking to her like monkey girl when she accidentally cut his neck a little bit, which I think he did on purpose. It seemed like he just wants to take out his anger on her, just because again he's white. He thinks he is above her. Like many people back then believe like black people were beneath everybody. Again, based on the color of your skin. So I really love seeing these, and it even kind of makes me laugh. But I mean, it's not true. Like well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Dr. Mudd. So Dr. Mudd helps Booth. He treats Booth's leg. In historical times, it was pitch black. And if you want to look at real life photos, you may, there are no street lights or lamps or anything at Dr. Mudd's house today, which is a museum you can go visit in Maryland. The only thing you could see is your car headlight, and that's if you're making it into the driveway, which is a long driveway. So just imagine it's like, say, midnight, a little bit later, pitch dark, and you hear banging on your door. And you come to the door, you're a doctor, and they're asking for medical help. Oh, my buddy fell, broke his leg. Well, he's a doctor. Of course he's going to help. But in the show, it's daylight, and he seems to know Booth, like they're mutual friends. In actuality, Booth did meet Mudd on a couple occasions, but there is no like evidence to say that Mudd was a part of the plot or even the kidnapping plot. In the show, they're making it seem like he was a part of everything. Like he knows every other conspirator. Like again, he meets Surratt Jr. I don't really like that. I mean, again, even when the Union cavalry show up, in actuality, they just basically barged into people's homes. That again, that's under Stanton's orders. He basically treated it like a war, so that's why he was able to arrest whoever tells them to barge into your home, destroy property if they think there's something hidden in it that either tells about the plot or they think they're harboring anybody. Eventually, just like the slave girl Mary, I believe her name was, she finds the boot under the bed with JWB on the inside, which is true. And that's what the Union cavalry found. So far in the show, Mudd is spared, but in actuality, he was arrested when they found that boot. And he was thrown in prison for the rest of the whole chase and trial for the other conspirators. So I hope they show that, but they don't really show that at the moment or lead to that. Mary did have the boot. I don't know if she's taking the boot somewhere now or if she's thinking about it, but that would be a nice touch. 2, we see Stanton and his detectives in the War Department like interrogating Mary Surratt. That could have happened. I mean, but again, at that time, women were seen, just as typically as women. They were not really that punishable. And again, Mary was actually one of the first women to be punished by the United States government. I will not spoil it for you, just in case if they show it. But that was even almost like taboo like people were like, oh my God, like they did that, what to a woman? They did what to her? Like, oh, the American government is so bad. Even though, again, she was a part of this plot to kill the president, and at first kidnap. But again, many people were seeing gender as well as race at that time. Like, hey, you're black, you need to be a slave. It's like, or something like that. Hey, gender played a whole part of it too. Women were supposed to be respected, treated fairly and nicely. But in this, I like how Stanton is almost like interrogating her, but in actuality, I don't think that happened. They could have denied her food or had soldiers interrogate her, but it wasn't Stanton. I can almost like 100% guarantee that. There are no stories I've read in all these historical books of Stanton ever doing anything. He just basically sent everybody out to find Booth, with no guidelines whatsoever. Really, they're like, "Oh, well, hey, we're gonna burn down your house because we think Booth went here. Did you harbor Booth? Oh, we'll burn down your house or arrest you." And that's basically what happened. Many people didn't get released until after, even after Fort Cedar, after the main assassination. They're not showing that in the show, but Stanton basically ordered that anyone with a mustache that resembled Booth to be arrested. So literally, if you had a mustache or lived around a certain area around the hotel and Fort Cedar, you were arrested by Stanton and the military. So we now get to one of the other nitpicks. And again, my other nitpick is Mudd. I believe Mudd was innocent. If he did know of any part in the plot, I can't say for sure. But again, I know with all the true evidence, it was pitch black out. He could not see who it was until they got inside. And again, he's a doctor. He's going to treat that person first. And I promised you a story, and I just remembered. Booth wrote in his diary, I believe I told you this, that he jumped off the balcony and broke his leg. Now, when Booth got to Mudd's house with Harold, they were brought inside, and one of Mudd's helpers or slave, depending, took their horses to be fed and to be taken care of. Again, it was pitch black out. But Booth told Mudd that, oh, I fell off my horse and broke my leg. Or I fell off my horse and something happened to my leg, either broke it. The helper, we'll just call him, noticed that on Booth's horse, there was some giant scarring almost on one of the legs, on the upper leg. And again, he's a horse guy, but he knows, and he told Mudd that, hey, yeah, this horse fell. So I believe, wouldn't it be interesting? I was always made to believe throughout all my life and me learning about the assassination and everything that Booth jumps off, either gets his leg tangled in the flag, which there's no evidence to show the flag teared or anything with his spur. So I don't think that's true. Or he landed funny, which they show in the show and also in real life. People think that because he limped off. But eyewitnesses at that moment said that Booth did not limp. He bolted to the center of the stage, lifted his knife, yelled 6 Semper Timers, and ran off. So only a few people think they said he limped. And maybe the adrenaline was doing work. Maybe it was doing the work for Booth. But they even said, a doctor said, he could not get on his horse with a broken tibia like that. He would need help. So either he was helped onto his horse and bolted or something else. But I think that Booth, again, is egotistical. He's trying to save face. So yeah, he'll lie to the doctor. He even told Harold, his buddy, that he broke his leg falling off the horse, or the horse fell on his leg and broke it. So maybe he's lying, saying that in his diary, oh, I broke it when I jumped. Oh, wouldn't that be funny? Again, egotistical. I broke my leg on the stage and they still couldn't catch me. So, again, Mudd maybe was innocent. Again, he's a doctor. The guy tells him he broke his leg falling off a horse. His handler guy, helper, tells him that, hey, even Booth's horse, or this stranger's horse does have scars on the side where it looked like it did fall on the road. It's like, so maybe the story does add up. But they're like showing him going full on, like, hey, I was a part of the kidnapping plot and all this. I don't buy that for a moment. So basically, again, all right, after that little story, we now see Booth and Harold trying to make it to Richmond. They meet with this black freeman who's like aiming guns at them and things like that, and they have to pay him to get them to like around the river I believe they're heading to, which was a famous river that Booth and Harold actually got kind of lost around. But that's not true. This guy, like a black freeman, did not aim guns at Booth, did not know who Booth was. Again, they're stretching this because it took days for the news to get out that Lincoln even was assassinated, and that kind of what gave Booth that few day advanced head start. They're acting like they're 1 day ahead of him now because, we got this Dr. Mudd, and they said that Booth may or may not have stayed there and he fixed his leg. Oh, we're a day ahead of them or behind them now. It's like they're a day ahead of us. We can get them. No, they're a few days ahead. And even if this black freeman guy who in the show is taking them to some location, in actuality, Booth and Harold were helped by former Confederate soldiers or Confederate sympathizers who escorted them through some of the woods and through some of the swamp area of Maryland. Booth and Harold actually stayed in a forest like picket area for like 3 days, 3 to 4 days. And they even wrote, Booth wrote in his journal, in his diary, that they saw like little small groups or regiments of cavalry with torches and things going by every day and every night. And they were like just a few yards apart. And they never caught him there. So again, the Union thinks they're on top of Booth. Well, in actuality, Booth was way ahead of them. And so that's pretty much it on that. I hope they do show that. I mean, again, I want to see more historical accuracies. At this time, I'm seeing some historical accuracies, but not many like true accuracies, I guess is the right way to put it. There's some inaccuracies. Like even the one scene I don't understand, who are they trying to say was spying on Stanton's wife, Ellen? I think they're trying to say that was supposed to be Surratt Jr. For like whoever was up on the roof and ducked down, and like now all of a sudden Stanton has his boot or something like the same boot size. Oh, only one guy and the whole conspiracy plot wears like a size 7 boot. Oh, well, that must be this guy who's spying on me and wants to try to kill me. That's far-fetched. I mean, again, they're trying to go with this whole detective MO, like he's Sherlock Holmes or something. But I still love the show. I also like how they're kind of showing that Booth is trusting this black guy to take them, even though he doesn't trust him again because he's black. And Booth is a racist. But again, in actuality, I don't think Booth would have trusted anybody like that. Again, most of the people he trusted were only white people. So that's why, again, in real life, they were ex-Confederate soldiers going home to, say, Maryland if they went south to join some other Confederate regiments, or just other white sympathizers or just random people that lived in the countryside saying, hey, can you take us down to this area? Or, hey, do you know the quickest way to the river between Maryland and Virginia? Oh, yeah, I could take you. And they would go. So, but if it was a black person, I think Booth, like in the show, he kind of turned around and was like saying, forget this, we'll find our own way. I think that's what Booth would have done. And that might have cost him everything. Who knows if history was different and if Booth wasn't racist or mildly racist. Maybe he had a little bit of trust issues. But that's episode 2. I hope you enjoyed this one. I will try to do episode 3 in the next day or two, maybe tomorrow. And we'll be kind of caught up with everything. Again, please like, comment, and subscribe. Please, again, leave a comment. I would love to read your comments on what you think about how I'm doing with my YouTube, or if you want to recommend something for maybe the audience to look at or read for, say, the topic like today, the John Wilkes Booth, or what do you think of the show so far? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do any of you else see other inaccuracies or historical accuracies that I overlooked or maybe forgot to mention? So thank you, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.